The doorbell rang, its shrill tone piercing the tranquil silence of my new home. I hurried to answer, not expecting visitors so soon after moving in. As I swung the door open, a familiar face greeted me with a smirk that instantly set my teeth on edge. "Dexter," I said flatly, trying to mask my surprise. "What are you doing here?" My brother-in-law strode past me without invitation, carrying a battered suitcase. "Nice place you've got here, Rowena. Cozy." I bristled at his casual intrusion. "Get to the point. I'm not in the mood for games." Dexter set the suitcase down with a thud. "This belongs to you, part of an old family debt, if you will." I eyed the suitcase warily. "What are you talking about?" "Open it and find out." His gaze held a challenge, daring me to defy him. Against my better judgment, I unzipped the suitcase. Inside, I found a jumbled mess of documents and a sleek USB drive. Panic gripped me as I caught glimpses of dollar signs and legal jargon amidst the chaos. "What is all this?" I demanded, my voice trembling. Dexter's expression hardened. "Let's just say your late husband had a few skeletons in his closet, ones that could implicate you if they ever came to light." My heart pounded as I rifled through the papers, desperate for answers. Harvey was a good man. He would never— "Open your eyes, Rowena," Dexter cut me off. "The man you thought you knew was a lie. Those documents prove it." I glared at him, fury burning in my veins. "Get out of my house." "I'm just the messenger," he said with a shrug. "Deal with it however you want. But remember, you're not the only one with skin in the game." With those ominous words, Dexter turned and left, leaving me to grapple with the unwanted legacy he had thrust upon me. As the door slammed shut, I sank to the floor, my world crumbling around me. I stared at the contents of the suitcase, my hands shaking as I unearthed one damning document after another. Receipts, bank statements, contracts, they all painted a sinister picture of fraud and embezzlement on a massive scale. And at the center of it all was my late husband, Harvey. "This can't be real," I muttered, grasping at straws. "These must be forged or planted by—" The sound of the doorbell jolted me out of my spiraling denial. I froze, panic seizing my chest. Was Dexter back already? I crept to the door and peered through the peephole, letting out a sigh of relief when I saw my brother Mark and his family waiting on the porch. "Rowena, open up, it's us!" Mark's cheerful voice boomed. I plastered on a smile and ushered them inside, trying to hide the turmoil raging within me. As my sister-in-law and their kids settled in, Mark pulled me aside, his brow furrowed with concern. "Is everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I considered confiding in him, but the words stuck in my throat. How could I explain the bombshell Dexter had dropped on me? Instead, I forced a reassuring nod. "Just feeling a little overwhelmed with the move, that's all." Mark seemed unconvinced, but didn't press further. We rejoined the others, and for a moment, I allowed the warm embrace of family to distract me from the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. But as the evening wore on, my mind kept drifting back to the suitcase and its ominous contents. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled Dexter aside, my voice low and urgent. "We need to talk. Alone." He smirked, as if he'd been expecting this. "Lead the way, sis." I ushered him into the study, slamming the door behind us. "All right, start talking. What the hell is going on?" Dexter leaned back, the picture of smug nonchalance. "I already told you, wait. Those documents prove that your beloved Harvey wasn't the upstanding citizen you thought he was." "That's a lie," I hissed, struggling to keep my voice down. "Harvey would never be involved in something like this." "Wake up, Rowena." Dexter's eyes glinted with malice. "The man you loved was a fraud, plain and simple, and you're next in line to pay for his sins unless you play ball." My blood ran cold. "What do you want from me?" He leaned forward, his gaze boring into me. "I'll be in touch with further instructions. For now, keep your mouth shut and your head down, unless you want everything you've built to come crashing down around you." With a final, sickening smirk, Dexter turned and left, leaving me to stew in the bitter truth he had forced upon me. As I rejoined my family, their laughter and joy felt like a cruel mockery, because in that moment I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. In the days following Dexter's ominous warning, I found myself consumed by the evidence in the suitcase. Every spare moment was spent poring over the documents, desperately trying to make sense of the web of deceit my husband had apparently spun. Just as I was losing hope, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. The sender claimed to have information about a secret offshore account linked to Harvey and Dexter's shady dealings. At the bottom was a simple message: "If you want answers, meet me at the Red Maple Diner tomorrow at noon." Against my better judgment, I decided to take the risk. The next day, I arrived at the diner and scanned the booths, searching for anyone who looked out of place. That's when I noticed a young woman sitting alone, nursing a cup of coffee and stealing furtive glances around the room. I slid into the booth across from her. "Are you the one who sent me that email?" She jumped, startled, then composed herself with a nod. "You must be Rowena Morgan." "And you are?" "Cora Lane," she replied. "I'm a journalist working on a story about your brother-in-law's business dealings." My heart skipped a beat. "Dexter? What does he have to do with this?" Cora leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Everything, from what I've uncovered so far. He's been funneling money through a network of shell companies, using your husband's construction firm as a front." I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Harvey was involved in this? Whether he knew it or not, his company was being used to launder millions, Cora explained. "And now that he's gone, Dexter is tying up loose ends, starting with you." Her words sent a chill down my spine. "But I had no idea about any of this. I'm as much a victim as anyone." Cora nodded grimly. "That's why we need to work together. I have sources and resources that can help us expose the truth and bring Dexter down." I hesitated, torn between my desire for answers and the fear of Dexter's retaliation. But as I thought about the way he had manipulated and threatened me, my resolve hardened. "All right," I said, meeting Cora's gaze. "I'm in. Let's take that bastard down." From that moment on, Cora became my ally in the shadows, guiding me through the murky web of evidence and helping me piece together the full scope of Dexter's schemes. But even as we grew closer to the truth, his grip on my life tightened. He started showing up unexpectedly, always with that infuriating smirk plastered on his face. And worse, he began involving my teenage son Aiden in his games, inviting him to expensive dinners and showering him with gifts. "He's just trying to be a good uncle," Aiden insisted when I confronted him. "You're being paranoid, Mom." But I knew better. Dexter was slowly worming his way into our lives, using emotional manipulation to pry us apart from the inside. And as the walls closed in around me, I could feel my grip on reality slipping away. With Cora's help, the pieces of Dexter's twisted puzzle started falling into place. We uncovered evidence of a massive fraud scheme spanning multiple states, involving several high-profile businessmen and politicians. The more we dug, the deeper the rabbit hole became. "We need to go public with this," Cora urged one evening as we pored over the latest batch of incriminating documents. "This is bigger than we ever imagined." I hesitated, my stomach twisting into knots. "What about the risks? Dexter won't take this lying down." Cora fixed me with a steely gaze. "The only way to stop him is to shine a light on his dirty dealings. Trust me, once the public knows the truth, he won't be able to wriggle out of this." Swallowing my fear, I nodded. "Okay, do it." Within days, Cora's explosive article hit the newsstands, laying bare the intricate web of corruption and deceit. The backlash was swift and brutal. Suddenly, my phone was ringing off the hook with reporters clamoring for interviews. Protesters gathered outside my home, demanding justice. And through it all, Dexter remained eerily silent, like the calm before the storm. It wasn't until I arrived at my small boutique one morning that I realized the true extent of his retribution. The windows were smashed, the merchandise strewn across the floor in a shambles. A sickening pit formed in my stomach as I surveyed the wreckage. "Mom?" Aiden's voice called out from the back room. "Is that you?" I rushed inside to find him huddled in the corner, his face streaked with tears. "Oh my God, are you okay?" He nodded shakily. "I'm fine. But the store?" My heart broke for him as I pulled him into a tight embrace. "It's going to be okay, honey. I promise." But even as I uttered those words, I knew they were a lie. Because in that moment, it felt like everything was crumbling around us. And Dexter was the one holding the sledgehammer. Over the next few days, the attacks escalated. My tires were slashed. Threatening messages were scrawled across my front door. And everywhere I went, I could feel the weight of disapproving glares and hushed whispers. Dexter's smear campaign was working. Slowly but surely he was turning the entire town against me, painting me as a conspirator in his scheme rather than a victim. I tried to fight back, granting interviews and pleading my case, but no matter what I said, the damage was done. The community that had once welcomed me with open arms now regarded me with suspicion and disdain. It was during one of my darkest moments, curled up on the couch with tear-stained cheeks, that my phone buzzed with a new message from Cora. "I have something that could change everything. Meet me tomorrow." Those 8 simple words reignited the spark of hope within me. Against all odds, it seemed the tide might finally be turning in our favor. The days dragged on like a waking nightmare. Dexter's campaign of intimidation and lies had taken its toll, leaving me isolated and ostracized by the very community I had called home. Everywhere I went, I was met with scornful glares and whispered accusations. Neighbors who once waved hello now averted their eyes, as if my mere presence was a stain on their perfect little town. Even worse, the damage had spread to my son Aiden. He came home from school one day, his eyes red-rimmed and his shoulders slumped in defeat. "The other kids won't stop talking about it," he mumbled, his voice thick with unshed tears. "They're calling me the son of a criminal." My heart shattered into a million pieces. I pulled him into a fierce embrace, stroking his hair as he finally broke down. "I'm so sorry, honey," I whispered, my own tears falling freely. "This isn't your fault. None of it is." But even as I tried to reassure him, I knew the words rang hollow, because in that moment it felt like the entire world was crashing down around us, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Just when I thought I had hit rock bottom, Dexter's final blow came in the form of a sleek white envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a single sheet of paper, bearing a chilling message. "It's time to face the consequences of your actions. Give up now, or lose everything." I crumpled the note in my trembling fist, a surge of white-hot anger coursing through me. That smug bastard thought he had won, that he could bully and threaten me into submission. But he was wrong. Dead wrong. I was done being a victim. It was time to fight back. That's when my phone buzzed with a message from Cora. "I have the evidence we need. Meet me at the diner in 30 minutes. My heart raced as I hurried out the door, renewed determination fueling my every step. This was it, our last chance to take Dexter down once and for all. When I arrived at the diner, Cora was already waiting, a steely glint in her eyes. She slid a thick manila envelope across the table towards me. "Open it." With shaking hands, I peeled back the flap and peered inside. My eyes widened as I absorbed the documents within. Ironclad proof of Dexter's crimes, complete with bank records, witness statements, and a damning paper trail. "How did you get all this?" I breathed, awe and disbelief warring within me. Cora's lips curved into a grim smile. "I have sources in high places, people who want to see justice done as much as we do." I clutched the envelope to my chest, a weight finally lifting from my shoulders. "This is it. This is what we need to take that bastard down for good." Cora nodded, her expression hardening. "Are you ready to end this once and for all?" I met her gaze, my jaw set with steely resolve. Let's burn him to the ground. The town hall was packed to the rafters, a sea of angry faces glaring down at the raised platform where I stood. Beside me, Cora adjusted the microphone, her expression grim but determined. "Are you ready for this?" she murmured. I nodded, squaring my shoulders. "More than ready. It's time to end this once and for all." As the murmurs died down, I stepped forward, fixing the crowd with an unwavering stare. "My name is Rowena Morgan," I began, my voice ringing out loud and clear, "and I stand before you today, not as a criminal, but as a victim." A chorus of jeers and boos erupted, but I pressed on, undeterred. For too long, I have been manipulated and maligned by a man obsessed with power and greed, a man who has lied and cheated his way to the top, crushing anyone who dared stand in his path. From the front row, Dexter met my gaze, his eyes narrowed in a wordless challenge. I held his stare, refusing to back down. "That man is my brother-in-law, Dexter Bellamy, and tonight I have proof of his crimes." With a sharp nod to Cora, the overhead projector flickered to life, displaying a damning array of financial records and witness statements. A hush fell over the crowd as they absorbed the weight of the evidence before them. "As you can see," I continued, "Dexter Bellamy has been orchestrating an elaborate fraud scheme for years, funneling millions of dollars through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts." I turned to face Dexter head-on, my voice dripping with contempt. "Isn't that right, Dexter? Or should I call you by your real name? Wilbur Hutchins, wanted fugitive and convicted felon." A ripple of shock spread through the crowd as Dexter leapt to his feet, his face twisted with rage. "You lying bitch," he snarled, jabbing an accusatory finger at me. "Those documents are fake, planted by my enemies to discredit me." But even as the words left his mouth, the crowd had turned against him. Cries of outrage and disbelief rose up from every corner of the room. Dexter's mask had finally slipped, revealing the true monster underneath. And in that moment, I felt a surge of vindication, unlike anything I'd ever known. "You can try to deny it all you want," I said, my voice ringing out over the chaos. "But the evidence doesn't lie. Your reign of terror is over, Dexter." As if on cue, the doors at the back of the hall burst open, and a team of stern-faced law enforcement officers marched in, surrounding Dexter with weapons drawn. "Wilbur Hutchins, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and a laundry list of other charges," the lead officer barked. "You have the right to remain silent." But Dexter wasn't listening. His eyes were locked on mine, burning with a hatred so intense it made my blood run cold. "This isn't over," he hissed, even as the handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. "You hear me, Rowena? This is far from over." As they hauled him away, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. The nightmare was finally ending. The truth had prevailed, and yet, even as the crowd erupted into raucous cheers and applause, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. In the aftermath of Dexter's dramatic arrest, it was like a thick fog had lifted from the town. People who had once shunned me now approached with sheepish smiles and profuse apologies. "We should have listened to you from the start, Rowena," Mrs. Patterson, my former neighbor, said earnestly. "Can you ever forgive us?" While part of me wanted to hold on to the anger and resentment, I knew that would only breed more toxicity. So instead, I offered her a warm smile and a simple nod. "Water under the bridge. Let's just focus on moving forward." As word of Dexter's true identity spread, more victims began to come forward, sharing their own harrowing tales of being manipulated and deceived by the man known as Wilbur Hutchins. It turned out his schemes stretched back decades, with a trail of broken lives and drained bank accounts in his wake. And at the center of it all was my late husband, Harvey, whose construction company had been the unwitting linchpin in Dexter's grand fraud. The more I learned, the sicker I felt. How could the man I had loved and trusted for so many years have been so blind to the evil unfolding right under his nose? "He was just a pawn in Dexter's game," Cora reassured me one evening over coffee. "And means to an end. Hutchins is a master manipulator. He had Harvey fooled just like everyone else." Still, the revelation stung. All those years of cherished memories now felt tainted, called into question by the harsh light of Dexter's betrayal. As if sensing my inner turmoil, Cora reached across the table and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "You can't blame yourself, Rowena. The only person at fault here is Hutchins. He's the snake who slithered his way into your lives and tried to tear everything apart." Her words offered little solace, because no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, the fact remained. My husband had been complicit, even unwittingly, in causing so much pain and destruction. It was a burden I would have to carry for the rest of my life. In the weeks that followed, the full scope of Dexter's, or rather, Wilbur Hutchins' crimes, came to light. Millions of dollars had been siphoned from legitimate businesses, investors left destitute, lives ruined in the pursuit of his greed. And through it all, he remained defiant, spitting venom and issuing ominous threats even as the walls closed in around him. "You'll get yours, Rowena," he snarled during one of our final monitored prison visits. "One way or another, you'll pay for this." I met his glare with steely resolve, refusing to be intimidated. "The only one paying is you, Dexter. You're going to rot in here for the rest of your miserable life." As the guards pulled him away, I couldn't help but feel a pang of pity for the broken, twisted soul he had become. Because in the end, his hunger for power and wealth had consumed him, leaving nothing but a husk of bitterness and hatred. It was a harsh reminder of the price of unchecked ambition, and a cautionary tale I vowed to share with Aiden and anyone else who would listen. For now, though, it was enough to simply bask in the victory, to feel the weight of Dexter's torment finally lifted from my shoulders. The nightmare was over, and a new chapter was just beginning. The sun peeked through the curtains, casting a warm glow over my bedroom. As my eyes fluttered open, I was greeted by a sight that still felt like a dream. Aiden sitting at my bedside, a brilliant smile lighting up his face. "Morning, Mom," he said, his voice brimming with a lightness I hadn't heard in far too long. "Happy Mother's Day." I pulled him into a fierce hug, blinking back happy tears. "Thank you, honey. Just having you here is the best gift I could ask for." After everything we'd been through, moments like these felt like precious gems, to be cherished and held close to the heart. As we broke apart, Aiden's expression turned serious. "I know things haven't been easy," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "With Dad gone, and then all the stuff with Dexter. I'm just sorry I wasn't more supportive from the start." I shook my head vehemently. "You have nothing to apologize for, Aiden. Dexter was a master manipulator. He fooled us all." Aiden's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Still, I should have believed in you. You're the strongest person I know, Mom." My heart swelled with pride and love. In that moment, I knew that no matter what trials lay ahead, we would face them together, our bond unbreakable. Over the next few months, life began to right itself once more. With Dexter, or rather Wilbur Hutchins, safely behind bars, the cloud of fear and suspicion that had hung over our town gradually lifted. My boutique reopened to a flurry of support and well wishes, the community rallying behind me after being shown the truth. And thanks to the restitution from Dexter's ill-gotten gains, I was able to not only rebuild my business, but also give back to the people he had wronged. It was a bittersweet victory, to be sure. No amount of money could ever undo the pain and heartache Dexter had caused, or erase the stain of my husband's unwitting involvement. But it was a start, a chance to heal and move forward, one step at a time. As for Dexter himself, he remained a specter lurking at the edges of my consciousness. Though locked away, his threats and promises of retribution still echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of the darkness that had nearly consumed us all. It was during one of my regular visits to the prison that I finally confronted him, steeling myself against the vitriol I knew would come. "Why?" I asked, holding his icy stare. "Why did you do all of this? What drove you to such depths of depravity?" For a long moment he was silent, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, his lips curled into a cruel sneer. "Because I could," he hissed. "Because for once in my pathetic life, I had the power to take whatever I wanted, consequences be damned." I recoiled, sickened by his utter lack of remorse. In that moment, I realized that Dexter, Wilbur Hutchins, was truly a lost cause, a soul so blackened by greed and hatred that no amount of redemption could ever reach him. And so with a heavy heart, I turned and walked away, leaving him to stew in his own bitterness and rage. Because in the end, that was all he had left, a hollow husk of a man, condemned to live out his days behind bars while the rest of us moved on to better things. As I stepped out into the warm embrace of the sun, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and excitement for the future. The nightmare was finally over, and a new chapter was beginning. One filled with love, laughter, and the unwavering knowledge that no matter what life threw our way, we would face it head-on, together. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was truly free, and that was a gift more precious than any revenge could ever be.